A few moments with you on the pew, pew, pew.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Pew. My name's Matthew.
And I'm Ver.
And today we have a special guest, Zack. Zack, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having me. So my name is Zack. I am a first-year student here at UD, studying mechanical engineering. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, but I had a friend who graduated from UD and had great things to talk about it, so I ended up here, and I've been loving it, having a great time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And how do we know Zack?
Zack is a friend of both of ours that we met, I met in discussion for housing next semester, and I know you knew him a little bit before that.
Mm-hmm.
I met him. He was just playing guitar, doing some jazz riffs, and
Yeah.
amazing everyone. So
Well, yes.
yeah, but he's in our Bible study, so we see him frequently, and he's always nice to be around. So
Oh, very nice. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, before we get into the meat and potatoes of today, we have some hot seat questions. Just to break the ice and get you ready, and hopefully not get you canceled or anything.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, first question. And I thought this was fitting because I feel like I could never see you getting upset at anything. So I asked, what's your biggest pet peeve?
Yeah. Right. I think I don't know. This is kind of I don't want to be a hypocrite, but when people complain sometimes, I think that's pretty standard.
That's fair.
That's a pretty standard response. But
That's
yeah,
fair.
when people complain about things that seem frivolous and just kind of stupid, you're like, what are we doing?
That's so fair. Valid.
But I know we all have our moments where we kind of fall into that a little bit. But yeah, I don't know.
That's awesome. Okay, do you have a favorite saint?
Well, I'd have to go with my confirmation saint, Saint Longinus. He was the centurion here who pierced the side of Jesus.
Oh wow.
So I kind of had a certain affinity towards him. I kind of just randomly discovered him, or he was shown to me. I think more like it. But yeah, ever since I feel like I pray to him every night, and just again him as a leader, him as a again a soldier, a model of discipline. I think it's just super inspiring, and he's also just kind of I don't know, it's kind of unknown, kind of cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah,
that's awesome.
that's awesome.
Okay, middle name.
Ooh, William.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's new.
That is new. Okay, which virtue is better, or which thing is better, mercy or justice?
Oh no, we do argue about this.
Or is there one?
Yeah, right. Oh my goodness. Well, I think I lean towards mercy.
Okay.
I think mercy
That's fair.
is, what I strive for.
Mm.
But you need justice too.
Yeah, true. Okay, if you could change your name, what would you change it to?
Ooh. Well, I like my original. So originally I was born Vladimir, which I always thought was
No
yeah,
way.
right. Which I thought was kind of cool, but there's a certain unpopular Vladimir around the world currently that's not as cool. But I don't know. I always kind of like the name Vladimir. I thought it
That's
was
so cool.
But-
Wow.
Very fitting, actually.
Whoa. Okay. What about favorite snack? Do you have a favorite snack?
Sure. Yeah. Right. Well, this was kind of weird. I started eating these almond crackers. I don't really. They're you like wheat thins?
Yeah.
They're like wheat thins, but they're made of
Nothings.
no, not nothings.
Nothing.
Nothings. Oh, I don't know about those, but
They're amazing.
that might be. I think they're like that because it's just a wheat thin, but made of almonds, and I really like those. Also wasabi peas. I don't know, kind of yeah.
Very obscure.
I know it's so random.
So niche.
Yeah, right. What the heck. But yeah, when it's late and you're trying to do homework, wasabi peas will keep you up, man.
Whoa. Okay, last question of the hot seat.
Sure.
Daylight savings, is it an L or a W?
Oh,
Because daylight savings is coming up.
I think
Sunday.
Yeah, right.
For us, Sunday.
I missed the hour.
It's already passed.
I missed. What, we lose an hour, right?
This time. So is it an L this time, but
It
a W
is.
next time?
It is. It's an L.
That's fair.
I need that hour, man.
Yeah.
But when we
Going
get the L,
home.
yeah.
Sweet. Well, thank you for can safely exit the hot seat.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Good podcast, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Yep.
All right. Sweet.
So, I know you wanted to briefly touch on finding hope in suffering, maybe personally or
Yeah,
conceptually? Like, how do
right.
you?
Yeah. Um, yeah, this was a conversation I was having with Nick Cardellino. I'm doing the Busy Persons Retreat,
Hmm.
and I've just had such a good time, just good experience, just getting to know him. Um, and this is a conversation we had, and I thought it'd be interesting just to kind of open it up and see what you guys thought, and I thought it was worth sharing. But yeah, he posed that question to me. He's like, the theme of our this past week was suffering, and he was like, how do you find hope in suffering, man? And I was like, shoot, I don't. That's a great question. And so we kind of got to it. I guess there's like we were split up to like physical suffering and then also like spiritual suffering. And then the way we kind of like delineated between the two is that like we think that perhaps physical suffering has hope, where spiritual suffering might be void of that. Like that's when it becomes spiritual suffering is when you lose hope. And so again, I just think that's just a super fascinating concept. And then again, we just, I don't know, we operate under this presumption that suffering's inevitable and we're going to have to deal with these kinds of things no matter what. Um, but at least for me, the suffering that I can find hope in has always been like bearable. You know what I'm saying? And again, I've been so fortunate I haven't had like horrible like suffering in my life. I haven't experienced, like really like horrible grief or really horrible loss or just, some of these things. Um, but I mean, from what I have experienced, it's just like again, just hope is so important in that. And so, I mean, where do we find it? So I don't know. Like, I mean, well, prayer, right? We pray about. I think for me, it's also like, again, the fact that this suffering is temporary is always hopeful. Like, okay, this time next year will be better, kind of thing. Like this thing will pass, and um, also this thing of like, well, it could be worse. There are worse things in the world. It's like, I think is good. But again, then I think there's also like we look at the news too, and like you turn on and you're seeing just this like mass like world suffering, right? We look at like the war in Gaza or the fight in Ukraine or all the other world problems that we're struggling with, and then just to try to like fathom or try to wrap our heads around like this kind of like suffering that is happening currently in the world. And I think you can easily kind of get into this question like, okay, well, what is really suffering? Like, what is true suffering, right? Like, have I experienced true suffering, or like, again, compared to what others are feeling? But then that's another whole other thing, right? Is like suffering. Can we give it a magnitude, right? Like, can we give it like, is it quantifiable? Is it fair to say? I don't know, to compare it, like
Yeah.
like my suffering's not theirs, but in some instances there absolutely are quantifiable. Like, these people have lost their homes, lost everything, oh man, I all of a sudden what I've experienced hasn't been that bad, so I don't know, there's just a lot of things that come through my head, I think when it comes to hope and suffering. But again, I think hope is just one of those like foundational virtues that just um opens up to so many different things, and it's just so important.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess going off of that and maybe like speaking in terms of like how you've dealt with suffering and like hope, like how those have worked out in your life. Like what would you
Yeah.
say is like a time or like when in your life have you felt like closest to God?
Yeah, sure. Um, yeah, so I think two moments come to mind, and one was I had like in eighth grade, I had some medical stuff that happened. I was in hospital for like a month. It was like a long time, and it wasn't like life threatening, but it was a lot, man. I was like bedridden for a while, and just things kept going wrong, and like multiple surgeries, and like all these stomach problems and stuff like that. And so you're kind of like in this, you're I don't know, you're in the hospital for all this time, and you're just kind of like really low, really a low
Yeah.
point in your life, and you're just kind of reduced to like the very, I don't know, you're kind of trapped with yourself a little bit, and I think it really puts to test like what you believe, right? Like, show me your beliefs and your theology, like, the how valuable they are like in your suffering, like what do you really believe in, like those low moments I think really comes to surface. um and that kind of suffering can, I think, an analogy I've heard, like it can kind of like it can crush you or it can kind of break you open, kind of thing, which I think is really like a profound way to think about it. And again, I'm so fortunate that I live in a society, and I have blessings where I was able to afford and have like good medical care. I was surrounded by really good treatment and everything like that. And so in those moments, I was able to, I don't know, again, find hope and faith and know that this will pass. Um, but in terms of as the moments of my life that I felt closest to God, I think is one of those in 8th grade. I think just being really like, which I know is like, 8th grade, man, really peaked there, maybe not, not the best year of everyone's lives, but again, just being like, I feel like when you're reduced to, again, just kind of like yourself almost, or just all of a sudden you're like put in this really low situation and things are really going bad for you, and it's like, well, what am I left with? Which is kind of dramatic, but again, it's just like you're kind of forced to turn to God in those moments, for sure. And again, it's just a reminding of your own humanity and the fragility of life. And of course, again, throughout all my suffering, it's been just such this air of grace and this air of gratitude and fortune, that my suffering hasn't been like life-threatening. It hasn't had this kind of permanence, right? This kind of like chronic thing. So again, I think that those very low moments of suffering, I think I felt closest to God, probably out of necessity, maybe. But then second from that, I would say almost last summer, so we have suffering, but then last summer I spent a week doing service, right? I went down to West Virginia building houses for a week, cool. And that Thursday night we had confession and adoration, and so I'm sitting in adoration and. We spent the whole week, sweating out. We're building houses. They took all of our phones away on this mission trip, which was kind of fun. The folks leaned in, because make all the kids actually get to know each other, right? Like being super intentional. And so, again, just kind of out of that context of service and intentionality and relationship building. And so that Thursday night, I had a really profound experience within adoration. Kind of the feelings people attribute to those kinds of moments, right? That kind of really profound sense of belonging and peace, and a kind of a sense of belonging that I didn't even know I was capable of feeling. I was just like, holy crap, I didn't even know a human being could feel this, right, this much peace, or this just much. Again, I don't know if it wasn't like an ecstasy, or it wasn't like a joy, or, it was just this kind of profound sense of just a puzzle piece going right in, kind of thing. It was just no, man, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And so I kind of examined that moment a lot. Well, it's what was the context? Well, I spent the whole week serving others, and I spent the whole week just putting God first and being super intentional. So it was almost of course, by Thursday I was feeling pretty good, right? Because I was doing everything that we're supposed to be doing. And so that exists as a memory, but I think it's kind of cool that we can use these memories almost as a tool to guide our present selves, right? Often I kind of seek advice from my best self, I feel like. And I look at that moment when I was closest to God, in that moment of adoration, and those moments in service. And currently, some of my own low moments, I think back to well, what would that Zack say? That Zack who was super close to God, who was super willing to help others, who had such a big heart. And I kind of turn to that version of myself for advice. Particularly when I felt that kind of profound sense of belonging, I often now try to I feel like all my actions now have been trying to get back to that moment, right? I only want that, I'll put everything aside, any worldly thing if I can, just to know that belonging. So, yeah, I don't know.
I think through those kind of two different stories too, you're touching on almost a type of humility, one where you're being reduced, in suffering, but then one where you're being a place is found in a group, and both are kind of humble in different ways, I guess.
Yeah.
And how would you personally for yourself define the virtue of humility?
Yeah, sure, right. So this is another nugget of wisdom that Nick Carlino passed on to me. And I just thought this was so cool. And just this changed the way I think about humility. And he said, humility is not lowering yourself. Humility is knowing who you are, right? Knowing yourself, right? That's what it means to be humble. It doesn't mean to make anything less of yourself or to reduce yourself, but just to truly know what you are and what you aren't, kind of thing. And I thought that was super. I really enjoyed that definition. I was that makes a lot of sense. Again, just that pure authenticity and that genuineness. So that's how I've been approaching humility, right? Where you can take pride in your work, and you can be proud of yourself and whatnot, but you just have to know who you are, I guess, know what you're capable of and things like that. So I don't know, I think about that definition a lot and the implications of that. But
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think one thing, like, as we wrap up, like, one thing that you talked about that I thought was cool was, like, in that 8th grade experience. Because I think that experience for a lot of people could be something where it's, like, a turn off or, like, like, how do I find hope in this? So the fact that, like, that is something, especially, like, at such a young and, like, a pivotal area of transition, I would say, in your life. Like, that's very, that's, like, awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah.
And it's such too, just to add on a little bit, just like already such like a confusing and like difficult time, like to put that on top of it.
Yeah. Right.
I really enjoyed your piece where you talked about like reflecting back on like that version of yourself, like when you feel like you're in the space that God wants you to be in, and just like using that kind of as your personal like
mentor, like
I think that's so profound and like very applicable. Which I think sometimes when it gets kind of like up in thoughts, it's hard to like apply it. So that's so like such a good way to bring it back down to earth.
Using your own best self as like your rudder in your sail, you know, and allowing the one who knows you best, which is yourself, to direct you. You know, like that's just a cool thing to play with and just be like, you know. So thank you. I just it's cool. But
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
It's
guys.
always so amazing.
Of course.
And we're excited. In a couple weeks, we'll have someone talking. Not going to reveal who, but she'll be talking about healing, which is going to be like very cool with suffering.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. But yeah, thank you for joining us.
Zack.
Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.
Pew, pew, pew.
Awesome.